Chapter 17. The Only Witness. Alex and Connor sat by their grandma's bedside all night. Neither of them could think about sleep at a time like this. They were afraid if they left their grandmother, it would discourage her from waking up. They hoped that if she felt their presence for long enough, it might activate that last bit of magic inside of her. An emergency fairy council was called early the next morning to discuss the matters at stake. Since the fairy godmother was absent, Alex asked Connor to accompany her. The twins always thought best when they were together, and they hoped they could help the fairy council assess the current situation. Alex took a seat in her chair, and Connor leaned against its arm. Although their grandmother's seat was empty, Connor wouldn't sit in it. He didn't want to feel like it was available. The meeting had already started, and they could tell the conversation was heated when they walked in. All the fairies were standing at their respective podiums, staring daggers at Mother Goose. "Let me get this straight," Esmeralda said. "An army from the other world has been trapped in a portal for 200 years, and now they've arrived to plan to take over our world." "That's it in a golden eggshell," Mother Goose said. She shifted her seat as the others glared at her. "And why didn't you bring this to anyone's attention?" Tangerina said, absolutely infuriated. Her bees flew aggressively around her beehive. They would have attacked Mother Goose if she'd given the word. "I didn't want to worry the fairy godmother," Mother Goose said. "I thought I could take care of the situation myself, and I was too embarrassed to involve anyone else. The brothers Grimm and I trapped them inside the portal, and then luckily, by the time their 200 years were up, the portal had been permanently closed by the fairy godmother. I thought it was in clear for good until she became ill." "So, you didn't tell anyone about this because you didn't want anyone to worry or think less of you?" Skylene asked. "That seems like jumping to a lake to avoid rain, if you ask me." Mother Goose looked at the twins, especially at Connor, and then told the council something she never told anyone before. "A very long time ago, before any of you were on this council, before the fairy godmother and I lost the color in our hair, gained the wrinkles in our face, and when we both were much thinner, both Amisa, Alex, and I was fairy godmother's first apprentice," she confessed. All the fairies looked at one another, floored. Of all the things they involuntarily knew about her, Alex and Connor weren't impressed that she had managed to keep this a secret. "It only took me a few months before I realized I wasn't cut out for the job," Mother Goose explained. "Sure, I was capable, but I just wasn't willing. I was too much of a free spirit to take on that kind of responsibility, so I passed the highest honor a fairy could have and became the laughingstock of the kingdom. The fairy godmother said she understood, but I knew she was disappointed, and it killed me. I promised myself I would never let her down again. So the 1800s, when I was careless enough to get caught by those greedy French fries, I tried to handle the situation the best way I could so I would never have to see disappointment in those eyes again." None of the fairies knew what to say, so they just shook their heads. Connor felt so sorry for Mother Goose. After growing up with a sister as precious as Alex, he knew very well what it was like to constantly disappoint people. Now he understood why Mother Goose hadn't been honest with him about the portal. "Come on," Connor said to the fairies. "Give Mother Goose a break. You're all standing there shaking your heads as if you could have handled this situation better. Well, no offense, but at least she came up with a solution. I can't remember the last time when I saw any of you solve anything. Every time there's a crisis, it's usually Alex and me who figure out what to do." "How are we not supposed to take offense to that?" Zenthio asked the others. "My point is, glass people shouldn't throw stones," Connor said. "The phrase is people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones," Alex corrected him. "Oh yeah," he said. "Well, you get my point." Mother Goose smiled at Connor and mouthed, "Thank you, sweet dog." Esmeralda massaged her forehead, and she thought about what to do next. "There's no use to blaming anyone for what has happened. We need to move forward and find a way to fix it," Esmeralda said. "Alex, what do you think we should do?" She couldn't believe Esmeralda was asking her. Me? She asked. Yes, of course you, Esmeralda said. Unless your grandmother miraculously recovers, you'll be acting as fairy godmother. This was a heavy thing for both the twins to digest. When people referred to Alex as the next fairy godmother, she always assumed that meant some day in the distant future, not now. Alex put her thumb and looked at the floor while she thought it over. We need to see this army first, so we know for sure what we're up against, she said. The more we know about them, the easier it would be to find a solution. The last thing I heard them talk about was an attack on the Pinocchio prison, Connor said. Why would they be attacking a prison? Rosette said. The general said they were recruiting, Connor said. Suddenly the room grew very tense. All the fairies eyed one another and frantically whispered among themselves. I told you that General Marquis is a smart man, Mother Goose said. Wait, am I missing something, Connor asked? What use can he get from recruiting a bunch of criminals? There are some pretty powerful characters in that prison, Mother Goose said. Trust me, I know most of them, and the prisoners in Pinocchio prison are only the ones who have been caught. The dwarf forests in the backwoods of every kingdom are crawling with criminals, and when they see their friends have joined the army fighting against us, they'll want all to join too. If the general succeeds recruiting them, we won't be fighting an old army, we'd be fighting a war. Connor gulped. He was sorry he had even asked. Cora was having difficulty processing the information too. She politely raised a hand and asked a question. So, are you saying that it's possible the happily ever after assembly may be against everyone else? Mother Goose said. All the creatures in other kingdoms have been waiting for an opportunity to overthrow the fairies and the humans. This could be their chance. Coral looked like she was about to cry. She cradled Fisher even tighter in her arms at the thought of what tomorrow might bring. The witches, the ogres, the trolls, the goblins, the elves, they've wanted us gone since the Dragon Age, Violet added. They've just they just lack the organizational skills to challenge us. And those skills the general can provide, Mother Goose said. While Connor and the fairies started to panic, Alex was adamant about her original plan. The more information they had, the more options they would have. She raised her wand and a bolt of lightning shot out of it, silencing the room of frightened fairies. We're worried about a lot of ifs, Alex said. We don't know if the prisoners have joined the general yet. Those criminals are in prison because they couldn't follow the rules of the society. What makes us different, they'll follow the general's commands. She made a very good point. There was no use in worrying unless they had evidence to worry about. My brother and I will go to the prison and see if they were successful in recruiting the prisoners, Alex said. We'll need a way to get there without being seen. And a flying ship or a unicorn isn't going to be unnoticed by men from our world. You can take Lester, Mother Goose said. That's why I rode him around the other world. If anyone sees him in the sky, they'll just assume he's a normal bird. Great, Alex said. We'll leave as soon as possible and get a better idea of what we're up against. None of the fairies argued. For the first time, Alex's word was final, and it was respected. With no time to lose, Alex and Connor immediately followed Mother Goose up to the grand balcony. She whistled for Lester, and he swooped toward them from the towers above. She pulled the reins down and whispered their plan into his ear. Froggy and Red were also on the balcony, showing their view of the gardens to Bree and Emmerich. Bree walked over to Connor as soon as she saw him. Hey, Bree, Connor said. How did you sleep? Oh, as well as anyone else could. Their first night of a new dimension, I suppose. Connor smiled. He remembered that restless feeling all too well. As tired as she was, Bree still had an excited light in her eyes as she looked around the place. I'm so sorry you guys are stuck here. We're going to get you home as soon as possible, Connor said. It's my own fault for wanting an adventure, Bree said. I made you take me, remember? This made Connor feel a little better. He looked over at Emmerich as Froggy pointed out the different parts of the gardens below. He looked like he was having the time of his life. He reminded Connor of himself during his and Alex's first trip to the Land of Stories. He would have given any to face those problems again. I just talked to Lester through it, Mother Goose said. He knows to fly high enough so no one will see it. Squawk! Lester nodded. Then let's get going, Alex said. They climbed aboard the giant goose and took off into the sky, heading to the direction of the prison. They flew over the gardens of the fairy kingdom, over the sparkling waters of Mermaid Bay, and saw Pinocchio Prison in the center of the peninsula in the southern eastern kingdom ahead of them. There it is, Alex pointed. Lester, circle the prison until we can see something. Lester nodded and looked the sky above the prison. There was destruction everywhere. Alex and Connor could see the entrance had been blown to bits from all the way in the sky. However, there was no trace of prisoners or soldiers anywhere. I think it's safe to get a little closer, Connor said. Lester gradually descended, circling the prison as cautiously as possible. The closer they got, the more certain they were that no one was around. They looked for somewhere to land, but the prisoner was covered in enormous spikes to prevent anyone from doing just that. Alex waved her wand the prison's roof. The spikes turned into all blades of grass for Lester to land on. Okay, let's see if there's anyone left inside, Alex said. She pointed her wand to the roof again, and a small hatch appeared. They opened a hatch and dropped inside, leaning on this prison's highest floor. The air inside was very smoky. All the cells on the top floor were wide open and empty. They looked down the center of the prison and saw all 29 floors below them were exactly the same. I don't think anyone's here, Connor said. It's like they had a fire drill and never came back. The twins jumped when they suddenly heard a voice that wasn't either of their own. Sitting in a cell on the top floor by herself was a woman. Psst, she said. Over here. Alex Connor approached the woman with caution. Whoever she was still a prisoner and couldn't be trusted. The woman was only a few years older than Red, but wasn't aged nearly as gracefully. Her hair was thin and messy, and she had bags under her enormous eyes. She wore a plain black dress and no shoes. Down here, the woman called up from them, and where she was sitting on the floor, her voice sounded alarming, but she seemed perfectly comfortable. You've got to warn someone. An army raided the prison earlier today and took prisoners with them. They're trying to take over the world. Alex Connor leaned down to speak with her. She stuck her head through the bars as far as it would go. We know about the army and are trying to stop them, Alex said. We've come to find out more. Were the prisoners taken captive or did they join them, Connor asked. They've joined them, the woman said. The soldiers opened every cell and gave each prisoner the option to stay or join their army. As you can see, it was almost an anonymous decision. Why didn't you leave with them, Alex said. The woman looked at them like they were insane. I'm not going out there, she said and shook her head. There's nothing out for me there. I mean, perhaps at one point there was, but not anymore. I belong right here in my cell. You've been in here for a long time, haven't you, Connor asked. Alex thought there was something curious about her. She saw there was a plaque on the wall next to the woman's cell, and Alex stood to read it. The Lady Gretel, sentenced to life in Pinocchio prison for the murder of Sir Hansel. Alex gestured for Connor to look at the plaque too. Connor, it's Gretel from Hansel and Gretel, she whispered to him. She killed her brother. What? He whispered back. It's all right. You don't have to whisper, Gretel said. I know what the plaque says. I know who I am. I know what I did. Alex only had so many questions. Why did you kill your brother? Gretel dreamily stared off in the distance. Because it was the only way I could be free. Free from what? Alex asked. From Hansel and Gretel, Gretel said. The story? Connor asked. No. The label, Gretel said. Their inquiry books begged her to explain more. Look, after my brother and I survived the gingerbread house, all I wanted was to have a normal life. But that's not what Hansel wanted. He wanted us to be heroes. He told everyone we knew about what happened to us in the woods, and then those people told everyone they knew, and soon word spread, and we became household names around the kingdoms. We were treated like royalty. Parades were thrown for us. We were honored with medals everywhere we went. They even named a holiday after us. That sounds pretty nice, Connor said. Gretel's eyes shot up at him. No, it was terrible, she said. Because no one cared about me. They just cared about Hansel and Gretel. I just want to be Gretel. Just Gretel. But No matter what I did, no one would let me just be Gretel. It was like my brother had become an invisible ball and chain. I was forced to carry it around for the rest of my life. But he was your brother, Alex said. Didn't you love him? Gretel grunted and stuck out her tongue, like she had tasted something foul. No, I couldn't stand him, she said. Hansel may have seemed like a nice young man, but all he cared about was himself and the attention he got. He used to drag me around with him just so he could get more admiration. Hansel also took all the credit for what I happened in the gingerbread house, even though I was the one who tricked the witch and pushed her into the fireplace. He wouldn't even be alive without me. Had I known then what I know now, I would have let the witch eat him. So you killed him instead. Gretel nodded. It was an accident. One day we were walking through the trees, and he started mentioning all the places he had planned for us to go, all the people we would meet, and all the rewards we were going to receive in the upcoming days. I got so mad I pushed him, but I didn't see there was a cliff behind him. Did you tell anyone it was an accident, Alex asked. I was planning to, Gretel said, but then I realized the cell allowed it to be something that the rest of the world didn't. Just Gretel. So I pleaded guilty and have been here ever since. And so today, when the soldiers asked me if I wanted to join this army or stay in the cell, I didn't have to think twice. Gretel sighed at the thought of peace in herself brought her. Connor looked at Alex and circled his temple around his fingers. She's nuts, he mouthed. But Gretel wasn't finished with her story. The worst thing one person can do to another, besides eat them, of course, is to reduce their identity to being only half of something. When someone is treated as half or less than half of one identity, they are not being treated like a human at all. Everyone should have the right to individuality. Connor slowly stood up and walked away from the cell. Well, thanks, Lady Gretel, he said. We should get going now. We need to figure out where this army went. Wait, Gretel said. I can tell you. The army and the soldiers went back to their camp, but the general and his men were headed somewhere else. Where? Alex asked. I don't know where, just somewhere else, Gretel said. The prisoners across from me, they call him the masked man because of the sack he wears over his head. He was talking to the general before they let him out. He convinced the general they need a dragon to get rid of the fairies to take over the world. He said it was the only way the general would win. Alex and Connor exchanged the same confused look. A dragon? Alex asked. But they'd been extinct for hundreds of years. Our grandmother and her friends were the ones who fought off during the Dragon Age. Apparently the masked man knows where to find one, Gretel said. And I know. I wouldn't be surprised if he did. He's a very unusual man. He's been in that cell for almost a decade now. He likes to talk to himself at night. Sometimes I swear I heard someone else in there with him, but that would be impossible. Connor walked to the cell of the masked man and peeked inside. Hey, Alex, this guy has a lot of stuff in here. Alex joined him in the cell. The door was open and they walked inside together. Just being gave them the creeps. The walls were covered in bizarre carved illustrations of winged creatures, pirate ships, and animals with big ears and feet. There was a pile of coal and had carved in pieces into two shapes of hooks, hearts, and swords. An oval mirror and a silver frame hung on the wall. What does the masked man need with a mirror, Connor asked. I have no idea, Alex said, but we should get out of here. We need to fly by their camp and see what the army is up to. They left the cell and went back to the hatch of the ceiling. Alex planted her wand on the floor. The stones rose from a small staircase for them to climb through the hatch. Goodbye, Gretel called out. I hope you can stop them. Us too, Connor said before climbing up the roof. Goodbye, just Gretel, Alex said. Thank you for your help. By the time the twins climbed to the roof, Lester had eaten all of the long blades of grass. They hopped aboard a giant goose and took off into the sky again. The general told half his men to set up camp somewhere in the southeast, somewhere in the portal spit us out, Connor told his sister. I bet they've regrouped by now. Alex took Lester's eyes and stared him to the sky high above the south of the eastern kingdom. Alex and Connor searched the ground as they passed over. Not sure what they were looking for. However, as soon as the camp came into view, they knew exactly what it was. Hundreds of trees had been cut down to make way for the expansive camp the soldiers had built. There were dozens and dozens of large beige tents set up, and the timbered trees had been used to build a wall around the camp. There were thousands of soldiers setting up the marching around the camp, and the soldiers weren't alone. 1,000 or so recruits from the Pinocchio prison were scattered around the camp as well. Giant ogres did the heavy lifting as the soldiers built the camp. Witches wove broomsticks out of the tree branches, and the soldiers trained goblins how to fire cannons and trolls how to shoot rifles. To Alex and Connor's horror, their target practice was a line of wooden fairy dummies. Mother Goose is right, Connor said. They're preparing for war. Alright, that's the end of chapter 17. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe if you want to hear more of the latest stories at Grimm, more books to come. Also, if you like the video, make sure you give the video a thumbs up. And if you have any more recommendations, don't forget to comment below on the recommendations for me to read later on. But overall, I hope you enjoyed the reading and hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!